フルカウンター
The new Overlord collaboration is dropping this Tuesday on Global, and the big question right now is, should you be summoning? Now, before we go over what these characters do and if it's even worth summoning, let me start the video by saying if you are new, then obviously subscribe. But also, if you're not following or used to the actual schedule for Grand Cross, we are going to be getting 2 festivals back to back within a month now. So literally at the end of November, we're going to be most likely getting Chaos Arthur, who is a human character that's probably going to make humans top tier and probably the best team in the game. So while we have a bunch of unknown support right now, and obviously with the new Overlord collaboration, you can't expect humans to probably be the king of PP for the next few weeks or even years, because we're definitely going down a route of obviously getting a lot of humans. Moving over, just tradition, we always get a new Meliodas, and my prediction right now is we're going to get a new Meliodas based off the newest chapter coming out in 1 month's time, where when he uses the combo attack with the 7 Day Sins called Nemesis. So I imagine we're going to get that Meliodas. However, that is not confirmed, but I think what is confirmed is definitely Chaos Arthur. So just bear in mind, if you don't have around like 1k gems right now, then it's really hard to recommend summoning unless you really want the characters. So let's go over if it's even worth summoning. Okay, so we're going to cover 3 of the 4 characters, that being obviously Ainz, Shalltear, and also Albedo. We're not going to cover Coctius because he's a PvE character. You get him for free anyway. The banner is obviously above me. It's a decent banner for collab standards. I mean, obviously not the greatest, since the actual overall rate for the new characters are at basically 1%, 0.25 for all 4 of them. One of them being a PvE character you get for free, of course. So you really only have a 0.75% chance out of 3% to get someone you actually want. So in theory, the rates aren't in your favor. But if you are a casual or new player, then at least getting Tamio and Saria duped out for the Graces and PvP is going to be obviously very good. Also, not to mention, we have obviously Camilla, also Oslo and Hawk kinda, and obviously the new Luducia. I say new, they came out this year, and I figure most people skip those characters, so getting it for the first time wouldn't be too bad, since they're obviously going to add towards your box CC. So overall, if you're like a casual or like, you know, or if you're not a crazy whale, then doing 1 rotation on this banner to get, mostly importantly, Albedo, and obviously picking up some new SSRs you haven't got before is not going to be the worst thing. Alright, so starting off with Ainz, these are the recommended units. Generally, these are unknown characters, so of course you want to have Nanishi's Relic, and he seems to be the go-to person. To be fair, I will say for these unknown characters, while Hell and Tyr are definitely by far the best unknown team right now, at least in Global, before we get the new Overlord collaboration, it really does feel like you can use any unknown character right now. So of course you could obviously use Hell, but my go-to for always is obviously 100% Nanishi, and I think Tyr is going to be obviously one of the go-tos. And honestly, the way Albedo is designed, it looks like you actually kind of want to use both Ainz and Albedo together. So while I do have Albedo as one of the recommended characters, you can easily swap her out for Roxy, you know, Ghislaine, Hell, any character really, so it doesn't really matter too much. Alright, so I'm not going to read through the passive word for word, can be sat here for a very long time, but to summarize it, this guy is Esterosa, the festive one, but for unknowns. Very, very similar. If you know how he plays, this is exactly how Ainz plays here. So firstly, the big difference here is that he does get a 10% stat or base stat increase for every unknown ally on the battlefield, which is quite big, because then unknowns already have like 50% base unknown stats for just being unknown in PvP, so massive there. But just like Esterosa, when you attack or an unknown ally attacks, you're going to apply Death Mark, unlike Darkness. There's a bit of a difference here. So Darkness for Esterosa gives your allies basic stats, where for Ainz, he gives decreased damage dealt. But there's a problem, because this does scale up of duplicates or dupes levels. So essentially, if you're at 1/6, the actual decreased damage you're going to deal per Death Mark is going to be at 2%, where at 6/6, it's going to be 6% damage decrease, which is massive, because bear in mind, you can only have 4 per target, which is a max to 12. And if you do the math, you're going to have around 72% damage reduction at 6/6 if you have maxed out the passive. And at 1/6, you're only going to have 24. That is, yeah, a massive difference. So this is one reason why I wouldn't recommend summoning for Ainz alone. Thankfully, he does have a Albedo and also Shalltear in the banner. But that is essentially what obviously what makes this guy pay to win kind of bad, right? Not bad, but unless you get him 6/6, he's not really worth using. But just like Esterosa, when you do apply 4 death marks, he is going to apply death pronouncement, which is essentially going to insta-kill someone after 1 turn. It's, yeah, very similar in terms of like, oh, you apply 4, you attack, boom, it kills him. And, yeah, that's essentially what the passive is about. First skill, like Esterosa again, he is going to deal more damage the more death marks you have on the other team. Simple as that. So you have to make sure if you're using a single target with this guy, you attack the person who has most of the death marks. AoE skill actually decent and a little bit different to Estarossa, because Estarossa will kind of mix in balance. There is no way to avoid AoE darkness towards his actual team, but Ainz can do this, and it makes a bit of sense because he does have attack basically 5 times here, but he does have AoE skill, which is going to reduce the attack rate stats by 10%, upwards to 20% on tier 3 for 3 turns, 2 turns, and this is actually kind of big actually, because once again, not only is the AoE skill to apply your actual death marks, it also applies the attack rate stat lower on a tier 1, so you don't have to rank up to a tier 2 to get this effect to apply. So that does make him a little bit better in terms of like team support, right? The ultimate is basically the single target, but on a single target ultimate. And this is kind of the bad thing, because he's meant to be the big, you know, OP guy of the series, and he got a single target ultimate. That's, yeah, very strange, but I guess that's okay because they gave all the love to seemingly Albedo. So, yeah, pretty much simple. He does more damage to more death marks on the character. It's going to kill at 6/6, basically. And once again, to make this guy a bit more pay to win and make him the more, you know, sought after character in a way, is his death marks do scale up of Duke levels. I did the math wrong. I did 6%. It's actually 7%, which is even worse. So it goes up towards like 89% damage reduction. Yeah, once again, just not great. So let's go over to the ranking. Ainz's longevity, I don't really see it lasting too long, since, well, if you don't bring Albedo or a taunt character, he's going to get absolutely destroyed by, obviously, Elo Escanor, who should be a bit more prominent in a month's time when we get, obviously, Case Arthur. And, yeah, he don't really have too much use, especially even on the unknown team. When you'd rather bring other characters like Hell, you know, Albedo, you'd rather bring Tyr. There's not enough room. Maybe in some 4v4 PvP situations, he might be a good go-to option, but then you run the risk of not bringing, obviously, Nanashi. So, it's a very tricky situation. I don't think he's like the Estarossa for demons, although he plays very similar. Estarossa seems like a must, where he doesn't seem like a must for unknowns. So, longevity, I feel like you just have way too many options. But once again, if you have the guy 6/6, he's going to be very, very good. At 1/6, you're going to definitely replace him very, very quickly. So for PvP, like I did say, even though I'm kind of downplaying him a little bit, he's still very, very good, especially at 6/6. So if you max him out, you dupe him out, he is going to be very, very good. So he's a 4-star rating. But in PvP, since, well, his damage reduction doesn't work, and his AoE doesn't do too great because, well, most bosses can't be actually debuffed, I don't really see too much of use for him in PvE. So overall, give him a 3-star rating here. If it was just him on the banner, I'd probably definitely say skip. However, it's not just him, because we still have Albedo and also Shalltear to get on the same banner. Alright, so for Albedo, by far, probably the one a lot of people are going to summon for. And personally, the only reason why I'm summoning right now, just to get her, honestly, 1/6. I'm probably going to do 2 rotations to try and, you know, get lucky and hopefully get her at least 4/6. But knowing the rates, I'll be lucky to get her at least 3 times. But she is the character I'm definitely going for, and the one I really recommend you are going for. So for recommending units, honestly, it's really just Nanashi. That's basically it, right? Because all you want for her is her buffs and also basic stats, and that is literally what Nanashi's relic does. So make sure if you haven't got his relic, you make it just for Albedo. Moving on to Tyr, I mean, he's just a go-to, going to make you crit more, make you do more damage. So, of course, that they're going to do really, really well together. So, going over to the passive, once again, I'm not going to read all of it because it is very lengthy here. But essentially, she's going to apply a bunch of damage reduction start of the battle, so you don't have to worry about starting second. And also, the biggest thing about a character works is when she gets attacked, when she just starts up, she is going to buff herself up with 10% attack rate stats for 3 turns up to 5 times. So, if you max out passive, 50% attack rate stats while in a stance, that does amplify. That also gives you 20% base stats. That also gives you 7% base stats for every unknown on the ally battlefield. Like, she's doing way too much. Like, this is the main character of the banner, and it's the one you definitely should be going for. But there is some counterplay to her. Well, you just remove her stance. But they made sure, well, if you remove a stance, or she just, you know, runs out of, like, obviously, the turns of it being used, you're going to get a 20% attack rate stat buff for her team. So she's not only buffing herself up, she's buffing her team up too. So massively important here. However, there is one more counterplay as well. If they decide not to buff up Albedo because you don't want to attack, and we get that stale method of obviously a SOC mode, a Medieus meta, where everyone just starts rushing ultimate. There is some counterplay here, so she essentially, if you decide not to attack her for one turn, she is going to apply a debuff that increases damage taken by 40% on the other team. So, like, the character's doing so much. She's super tanky, not only with her relic, her passive, and the basic stats that unknown allies gets. The fact that she pairs so well with Nanashi, that makes you even more tankier. Like, we've seen how tanky unknowns can get. This is going to be another level. And not only that, because her skills benefit her even more. Her first skill is going to be a single target skill that's going to debuff even on a tier 1. That is just going to decrease the damage they deal. So if you see tier, for example, you see, you know, Demon King, that's going to do a lot of damage per melee, assuming he doesn't cleanse. Boom, you're going to be even more tankier because they're now dealing less damage. And if you pair that with Ainz, of course, that's going to be very, very good too. So once again, they kind of work well together. But once again, Albedo definitely does not need Ainz, where Ainz feels like she needs Albedo. Second skill, this is the reason why the character is so good. Not only is she very, very tanky, she's also going to deal a lot of damage back. Because, well, she has a counter that taunts enemies that also deals back amplified damage. I mean, you know how Amplify works. The more buffs you have on the target, which is going to be having 5 for herself, maybe 6 if you don't attack, for example. Not only with Nanashi, who gives like 4 or 5. Like, bro, it's going to be unreal. You can even bring Roxy, for example, that gives you a shield every single turn and also gives you attack rate stats. You can bring Margaret. Like, there's so much stuff you can do with this character, which is going to be very, very fun to play around with. Also, little side note for PvE content, I did see someone defeat the bird, which isn't much of an accomplishment right now, but they defeated bird with just her and Miguelda. Like, the character is going to be insane, even in PvE content. And once again, I mean, if the character wasn't good alone, people will be summoning for her just for how she looks. And to be fair, I'm partly doing that as well. But because she's actually a top tier character, that's making it even better. However, not a top tier character that doesn't have counters. I mean, using Ella Escanor that can buff remover is going to be very, very important. And honestly, going to keep Albedo in check. However, there are characters like Ghislaine, for example, that can actually taunt the Ella Escanor since he does have the highest stats in the game. So he's going to always get targeted by Ghislaine, which means Escanor can never attack Albedo, making Albedo kind of free to do what she wants. So yeah, that is insane. There's so much synergy around her, so much team building. There's so much you can do with the character. But it doesn't stop there because she's an AoE ultimate that's going to increase her crit chance and the crit damage. Granted, it does actually scale up her dupe levels. So, yeah, you want to get a little bit duped out here. And they did the bad thing, and that is the Quill. Quill deals more damage the more stance effects you have on your actual self when you use the ultimate. And this is good if it didn't scale up. So essentially at 1/6, it deals 5% per stance effect, where 6/6 is 50%. Basically like Queen Diane. You know how Queen Diane is, she does almost nothing at 1/6, where 6/6 she's actually doing a pretty good AoE ultimate, where Albedo's kind of doing the same thing here, but at least she does buff herself up a little bit. So if you want to use a stance effect before or after, it's going to do even more damage too. So yeah, the AoE ultimate 6/6 is going to be an absolute nuke. However, I will say, like I said throughout the video, is you don't need to get duped out because, well, most of the damage comes from a stance effect and doing what she does with her stance effect. And if the game goes on long enough to use your ultimate, then she's going to wipe out. But generally, I feel like with the way the game has gone right now, you're going to kill within 2 or 3, 4 turns, especially with obviously Ainz in the team, or even Shalltear, or even using Tear or Hell. They don't typically last long enough to get the ultimate effect. So, yeah, you don't have to worry too much about that. So, overall, going into the rankings, probably one of the highest I've given since I've done this series so far, or essentially since the last festival unit. Essentially, longevity, she's going to be a 4-star. She is going to be a must in PvP and also PvE content. Like, in terms of, like, farming, auto-farming final bosses, she's going to be the go-to. In terms of bringing in the Heroes Arena, she's going to be the go-to just to cheese a bunch of the PvE bosses that always attack her. Also, in terms of like other content, like, you know, guild bosses, even bringing her in some of the Molly B battles, she is going to be a very, very good character. PvP 4-star, she's going to be very, very good. She would be a 5-star, I think, if LR Escanor didn't exist, honestly. And then going into PvE, once again, there's no... She works in all content, like just going against bosses. Some bosses may actually have the damage reduction from counter effects, so that might limit her a little bit. But overall, we're giving her a 4.5-star. Once again, a very, very good character. And especially when you think about it, you're getting around 300 gems for free during this event. So it only recently costs 300 gems to get her. It's a steal. You have to get at least once here. Alright, so Shalltear is pretty much a pug medi for unknowns, but on a worse but better skill, depending on how you look at it, but honestly probably worse because, yeah, she's not doing what Pugmelly's doing. But it's probably a good thing because if they got that, then the Unknowns would be absolutely broken, if they're not already top tier broken. So for recommended units, we have obviously Nanishi and Tier, the go-to. But the reason with Albedo is because unlike Pugmelly, when Pugmelly enters True Magic, he has no downside, where Shalltear does. She actually loses much of defense. So bringing a taunt character like Albedo or Ghislaine kinda is actually going to be very beneficial. Okay, so Shalltear's passive is a pretty straightforward one. Once again, if you know how Pugmelly works, very similar towards that, but also worse. So you kind of see what they did here. They made a worse version of Ainz as Berserk Estarossa, and now a worse version of Pugmelly, but for Unknown, which is probably a good thing, because if you got an actual Pugmelly in the exact copy and paste for Unknowns, he'll be even more broken. So what she does is she gets basic stats, once again, a given for unknown characters. But like Pugmelly, when she gets attacked 3 times or she attacks 3 times, she's going to enter Frenzy, which is going to increase her attack rate stats by 50%. But there's a downside because you're also going to reduce your defense by 30%. So yeah, that's why it's important to bring a taunt character. But there is one difference between her and also Pugmelly. He can constantly keep on cycling into his actual True Magic form, which will obviously remove the actual damage reduction that he provides for demons. Where Shalltear doesn't do that. When she gets her max actual 3 stacks, you're not going to enter Frenzy. The only way to enter Frenzy is by waiting 1 turn. At the start of the ally's turn, if you have 3 of your actual hate-related stats, you are actually going to enter it. So Pugmelly, for example, if he's got like 1 Curse of Shackles left, he can use 1 skill, boom, enter True Magic, and then boom, do insane damage, right? Where Shalltear can't do that. If she has 2 at the start of battle, if she uses 1 skill, she will have 3, but she won't enter her actual Frenzy form. She'll have to wait for the whole turn to actually enter it again. But there is one good side, and that is, well, she has 1 whole turn to go crazy. Unlike Pugmelly, you can only do 1 attack. She can go 1 whole turn and do 3 AoE skills, 3 single target skills, and deal crazy damage. So once again, kind of a give and take between her and Pugmelly. Arguably better in some situations, but arguably worse because, once again, she's getting debuffed where Pugmelly doesn't. But she can also do more than Pugmelly because she has 1 whole turn rather than just 1 attack. Oh, also her AoE skills apply bleed. Going to be kind of important for the next 2 skills. First skill is Exploitation. She is going to deal double damage and also double crit damage if the target is affected by bleed, which once again she does an AoE skill, and thankfully she does an AoE skill which is AoE Infect. Once again, you know how important Infect is. It is mega powerful and going to make this character honestly top tier. So not only is she applying AoE Infect, she's also applying AoE Bleed and also dealing double damage and double crit damage, which will go very well in her Frenzy form. So yeah, that is basically her kit. Her ultimate is going to be an AoE ultimate that increases all of her stats for 2 turns by 30%. Once again, making it so she's going to deal even more damage, especially in her Frenzy mode. And also, just to add it on top of it, she get a lifesteal even more as well. So yeah, that is Shalltear. Once again, a arguably worse version of Pugmelly, but a very balanced one because, once again, how would that work in the unknown team? She kind of got to be balanced a little bit. So for longevity, we're giving her a 3-star here, mainly because I think in PvE content, you're not going to use her too much because, well, she has to apply bleed and most bosses can't be debuffed. So in terms of PvE content, other than Heroes Arena, you're definitely probably not going to use her here. But in PvP, she's definitely going to shine. That's why she's got a 4-star rating. Effect alone is going to be very, very good. But like I said, you kind of got to build around her a little bit because, well, once she goes crazy, she's probably going to die. So unless you can kill the whole team in her 1 turn, she's going to die and not do too much. But then again, she can infect, so even if she does die, her other allies can finish up the job a little bit. Or you have to bring a taunt character, which should be fine because Albedo is definitely broken. So overall, giving her a 4-star rating here. Using her to all clear your Heroes Arena or using her to do good damage or big DPS in PP is gonna be really, really great. But once again, I feel like she's not a must-have like Albedo a little bit. I think you could easily replace her for obviously Echidna. I think Echidna not necessarily does the same thing because you don't have single target damage, but you know, in fact, that's kind of the main use for her. To go over the relics here, we have obviously Ainz giving basically beta stats for the unknown race by 50%, which is going to be a really good support character. Like I said, Ainz at 6/6 is going to be really, really good if you fully max him out. Albedo is going to get even more tankier, which is insane to think about. And also, Shalltear being actually kind of a good support character in a way. She's going to heal every single time she attacks. Kind of like Beatrice a little bit, but actually good. However, there's a problem, and that is right now, almost every single team. Apart from humans and kind of the Ragnarok team, they don't really have Infect. And to be fair, for healing, when you have Hell on the other team, doesn't really mean too much here. But at least you can heal the team and be even more tanky, especially if you're trying to kill Albedo. Healing her up is going to be ridiculous. So boys, that is it for the characters. Should you summon? I think going in and getting at least one copy of Albedo and hoping to get Shalltear on the side, or maybe even Ainz, will be very, very good. I can't stress enough how good Albedo is going to be in the future in terms of just PvE content, like farming, just using any generic content. She's going to be very, very good in, and also very, very fun. I mean, just one thing to take away from these characters is that they look very, very fun. Playing around, you know, Shalltear's Frenzy, buffing up, obviously, Albedo. Not so much Ainz just being a good support character and being there for the team. These two look very, very fun to play around with. However, the banner is what's limiting this banner a lot here, because it's only 0.25 rate for one of these characters. It's going to be hard to get them. So you got to be very, very lucky to hopefully get both of them in one rotation. But I do think it's worth doing at least one rotation and getting one Albedo, because it's only 300 gems, because you're going to get enough resources for free to do half a rotation anyway. But while this banner is definitely tempting, do make sure you save some gems yourself for obviously the end of year banners, because, well, we're going to get Chaos Alpha, who's going to be a must summon, and also the New Year banner. Not only is the character going to be a must summon, whoever it may be, the banner is going to be very, very good. And that's kind of what you go after. So boys, once again, save your gems, but also don't go too crazy. And once again, I recommend doing at least one rotation just to get Albedo, because it's a must. That's literally what I'm doing. I may do 2 rotations because I might get a bit greedy and trying to get a dupe title a bit, but yeah, getting one copy of Albedo and one copy of Shalltear is my goal, and that's what you lot should be doing too. But once again, save some gems if you don't have too much. Boys, thank you for watching, and yeah, peace.